Welcome to Law Awareness Weeks at CDC 2025, which kicks off with this webinar. Law Awareness Weeks at CDC 2025 is the collaboration between Pro Bono SG, the 5 Community Development Councils, National University of Singapore Faculty of Law, Singapore University of Social Sciences Faculty of Law, Singapore Management University School of Law, the Singapore Corporate Council Association Pro Bono Chapter, and the Singapore Association of Social Workers, supported by the People's Association. My name is Eunice Chua, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar, Protect Yourself, How to Spot and Avoid Scams. With that, I would like to introduce you the 3 wonderful panelists I have today, James Lim, Weijian, and Victoria Ting. Starting with James. James is the CEO and Master Trainer at Center for Cybersecurity Institute. He is consistently focused on creating environments where learners and team members alike can unlock their full potential. His vision for cybersecurity training is rooted in making it accessible and relevant, ensuring that those with no technical background can find their footing in this crucial field. He has worked with teams across aviation, humanitarian aid, and utilities. Next, Weijian. Weijian is Deputy Director of the Behavioral Insights and Research Unit at the Monetary Authority of Singapore, or MES. With over a decade of experience across government sectors, including transport and sustainability, he brings a strong track record of applying research to public policy and organizational change. He holds advanced degrees in applied neuroscience and business administration and combines his curiosity about the human brain with a passion for understanding the forces that shape human behavior. Last but not least, Victoria. Victoria is an Associate Director at Setia Law LLC, specializing in financial crime, fraud, and investigations. Before working at Setia Law, Victoria was a Deputy Public Prosecutor with the Attorney General's Chambers of Singapore, where she handled multiple fraud, money laundering, and bribery prosecutions. She graduated from Cambridge University and holds an LLM from Columbia Law School. So, James, Weijian, and Victoria, thank you for joining us today. And to you in the audience, thank you for tuning in. For today, you'll find out more about common scam types, how to spot and avoid scams, as well as what to do should you or your loved ones realize you have been scammed. To start us off, I'm going to ask Victoria to give us an overview of the scam landscape today.
Thank you, Eunice. And it's always a pleasure to be back. The types of scams that we have, I don't think is really new news. The typologies are the ones that we've seen year on year, unfortunately. And every year, I think what happens is that the top 3 seem to jostle with each other a little bit. And this year, I think in first place, we have, in terms of the total number of cases reported, job scams came in first. Second is investment scams. And then third is government officials impersonation scams. And if I'm not wrong, I believe government impersonation scams was first last year. So perhaps it's a good thing that that's come down slightly in the rankings. In terms of the total amount lost, though, the one that's the most concerning is investment scams, followed then by the government impersonation scams, and then we have job scams. Rounding out the top 10, all your usual suspects: e-commerce scams, phishing scams, fake friend call scams, insurance services scams, sexual services scams, loan scams, internet love scams. So again, I don't think any of this is new to us. We all know these typologies exist. And the question is, how do we then get ahead of these when the scammers are so quickly adjusting their methodology, their playbook, so that we're not caught out?
Yeah, so Victoria, you mentioned that these scams, we have seen them across the past few years. They changed positions.
Yeah.
And this Actually, it's I think the fourth webinar that we are running with
Yes,
Law Awareness Weeks at
indeed.
CDC on scams. So maybe we turn to Weijian, right? Because as a behavioral psychologist, do you think it is possible for us to protect ourselves from scams, or is it something inevitable?
So maybe to start off, as behavioral scientists, I think we have a certain reluctant respect for scammers. In a sense, they are like the Moriarty to our Sherlock. They are experts in human behavior, but unfortunately, they use the knowledge to harm people. So to answer your question, and also at the risk of oversimplifying, I think we can think of the way our brain looks at or makes decisions in one of two ways. This was a framework by Daniel Kahneman, a very famous psychologist. There is a system one thinking, a slightly more instinctive and automatic way of thinking. And a very easy example of this is our daily habits. You don't think about if you have a habit to go brush your teeth every night, you won't think about it, you just do it. The second way is system two thinking, which is a more deliberate way of thinking. And this is maybe an example I'll give is what my wife always complains about me whenever I make a decision buying computer electronics. I often take a week. I would look through all the features, the specifications, compare them very carefully before making a decision. So very often scammers would like to exploit our system one thinking. They don't want to give us a lot of time to react and think, because the moment we react and think, we realize that it's a scam. So they like to put us in a hot emotional state. For example, they make use of fear and greed, grab us there and keep us there. So as we go through the scenarios later, I think I'll point out some of these, and I'll also take the opportunity to introduce some of these persuasion techniques that scammers often deploy. Yeah.
Right. So we can look forward to learning more about these techniques so we can defend ourselves against them, right? And now coming to James. So from a cybersecurity perspective, right? Again, scammers evolve so quickly. Is it worth our time today going through all these scam scenarios and learning more about them? Is it possible from that technical perspective to also protect ourselves against scams?
I believe so, right? Because we've gone into an age where, we can't leave our phones, right? We can't leave our digital devices. In fact, if anything, right now, I believe our phones hold more information about us, than, maybe, a hard copy of anything, right? So instead of, just saying, hey, I don't want to know more about them, why not, let's take this chance and really understand, how we can protect ourselves, right? And once we learn something, I believe in the ripple effect, right? Once you learn something, you spread it to your friends and families, and let's make everyone more knowledgeable about this, with a safer environment for everyone.
Thank you for that allusion to the ripple effect. So we really hope that today you in the audience, if you have learned something new, you can also share it with your friends and family. And hopefully all of us together, we can improve our knowledge about these techniques that scammers use to protect ourselves. So we're going to go next into different scenarios. We'll dive deep into them, and starting with our very first scenario. This case involved Suzanne, who received an email from a very popular online store with a flash deal of 70% discount on branded items. So Suzanne was excited. She clicked the link from the email and went to a website that looked identical to the described store. She didn't think further, even though she noticed maybe the URL seemed a little off. But because the time was running out for the flash deal, she just went on, she found the backpack that she wanted, and she proceeded to check out. At the checkout page, the website asked for her credit card details, which she then keyed in. And after she did that, she received a one-time password notification on her phone. As you can see on the screen, the one-time password says your OTP code for setting up mobile wallet is 472913. Okay, so that it for 5 minutes. Do not share this with anyone. If you did not request this, contact your bank immediately. Now, Susan was very eager to complete her purchase, and she just keyed in the 6-digit OTP without really reading this full message, assuming that it was related to her purchase. 8 days later, when her credit card statement became available, she was shocked to find multiple transactions that she didn't do, adding up to a total of $5,000. When she called her bank said someone had added her credit card to a mobile wallet and made purchases from there. So Susan insisted that she did not set up any mobile wallet, and there was a dispute between her and her bank. Okay, so this is a common scenario I feel that many of us and our friends have encountered before when you just happen to notice your statement shows some unauthorized transactions. We're going to start with Weijian first to help us spot the psychological warning signs.
Yeah, so thanks, Eunice. I think this is the perfect example to start the webinar off with because here I can introduce two general ideas. So the first I'll introduce is the principle of scarcity. This is a persuasion principle, and I think back then I alluded to these persuasion principles that were first introduced by Robert Cialdini. He initially used it for marketing, but then he realized that research in the field basically sees that a lot of scammers actually make use of all of these principles to in the way they use to persuade their victims. So the principle of scarcity, I'm sure this is something we're all very familiar with. I think those limited time sales that we see out there, we often see, oh, there's only 1 or 2 units left. What it implies to us is that the item is scarce and it's valuable. So we become very attracted to it. So this grips our attention. And the second idea I will introduce would be a attention spotlight. So what happens is that our attention generally is quite limited. We are often very focused on only just one thing at any one point in time. And that's the reason why you shouldn't text while driving. It's very dangerous, but okay, this is not a traffic safety.
Different kind of danger.
Yeah. So what's happening is that your attention, Suzanne's attention, is probably focused on getting that item on a flash sale. So when it comes to routine things like the OTP, I bet that she's probably only looking at the number. Everything else becomes background noise because it's procedural. It's something that we do all the time. So when we do something all the time and it's very procedural, it becomes background noise to us. So that's probably what's happening behind this scam, and probably the reason why she didn't notice the message and fell prey for it.
So you mentioned 2 techniques here that we can watch out for. The first is when the scammers want us to believe that something is time limited, is very scarce, so that we have to act fast to get it. And the second one is noticing that as human beings, we will spotlight our attention on certain things, and then others might not come to our attention even though they are there, right? So to slow us down, is there a certain technique that you recommend?
So generally speaking, I always live by this rule. If it's too good to be true, it usually is. Generally speaking, limited time sales are not always limited. E-commerce websites have found many ways to capture our attention. I think there was this study back then talking about how e-commerce sites actually deploy dark patterns, and one of the dark patterns is to intentionally tell people that there's only a few items left when really there is a lot. So I guess knowing some of these strategies, you can tell yourself to perhaps slow down the purchase. It's not that urgent. I'm sure you'll be able to find it somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, so just reassure yourself that you have time. Okay, we all have time before we decide to buy something. Okay, so that is the psychological perspective. We now come to the technical perspective with James, right? And I'd like James to share with us how come the government or the authorities aren't able to take down all these phishing sites quickly enough, and they come up so often. Is there some explanation to that?
Yeah, I believe that, the government, the authorities are actively trying to catch, and trying to stop all these, scammers, all these activities and happening on the internet. But ever since the boom, of cloud, right? Cloud devices, meaning, it's not up in the air. Basically, cloud refers to, a computer that owns by another company, and then you lease their devices for your own personal use. And, you basically, or scammers can basically hide behind these big companies or companies in general, right? And or even set up their own cloud machine, right? Or I deploy a device, in another country, right? And I remote connect and set it up, right? And all this becomes very readily available, in this day and age. And then, it's hard for the government to trace, right, where this is coming from that fast, right? And on top of that, there are technologies where, you can hide where you're coming from, right? While we are familiar with technologies like VPN, right? You can mask, where we are coming from or where we are going towards. The scammers are also using that exact same technology to mask their trail, right? So, on one hand, you may look like they are coming from country A, but actually they are residing in country B, right? So it takes time for, the authorities to gather enough evidences to be able to say, to pinpoint exactly where they are from.
Mm. And I hear you've prepared a demo for us on this that shows how easy it is to set up a phishing site.
Yes, I did, because from the way I look at technology, right, it's that, in this day and age, I'm not sure if you all have noticed, right, technology has boomed so quickly, right, and nowadays, any technology, you don't really have a lot of instructional manuals. It's almost to the extent where you just plug and play, right, and because of that, we I believe we need a little bit more understanding of how tech works, right, so that we understand how easy it is or how it is done to a certain extent, right, so that it can then better inform us, what are the things that we should look out for. Yeah. So if you look at the screen showing right now, right, of course, this is a quick disclaimer, right, everything that I'm showing here belongs to myself. They don't belong to anything in public. Not It doesn't belong to any bank, right. I'm trying to simulate a real site, and then at the same time, how can I clone a fake site, and what can I see, when, let's say, you or myself, we enter our credentials, right? What can a hacker see at the back end? Yeah. So let's get into it. Right. So on the left side of the screen, you see that it's a bank, login website, right? And very typical, right? You have your normal bank login, username, password, and just to note, FCW Bank is the real site in this situation. On the right side, that is where I have my own hackers, kind of platform, right? Our own terminal, and I'm going to run this thing called the credential harvester attack method, which means I want to gather your credentials, okay, by cloning a particular website. And as a hacker, what we can do, for this tool, I just press 3, enter, and goes to the next page, and I say, let's do a site clone. Right? I want to clone this particular website on the left. Okay, so I'm gonna press 2. Right, and here, we can actually see, oh, where do I want this information to be sent to? Right, I want it to send back to my machine. That's a IP address, right? It's the address to locate a device on the network, right? And of course, this is purely for internal. You are not able to use it to access the internet, so it's all on my machine. So I'm just gonna press enter from here, right? And then you'll allow the system to say, hey, send it back to that particular device itself. Then the system will prompt, okay, which URL do I want to clone? Which exact website do I want to make a copy of? So that I can use this website and to scam someone. So I'm gonna say, okay, let's clone the SCW Bank, right? And it's ready, right? So in a matter of like few clicks, right? This phishing website would technically be ready for someone to use. Okay, and next, we're gonna see, let's say, we go to a particular email, right? And pretend that this is an email. I received an email notification. There was a charge of an amount to my bank. Because I bought some juicy cheeseburgers, right? And they say, hey, can you please log into this bank account to verify my transaction? Okay, so something to note, right, is that when you look at a link, right, like Weijian was mentioning earlier on, don't be too rushed to engage, right? Because if you hover over that link, it's quite small on the left. Take some time to, screen your eyes a little bit, right? You can see that it's actually a different URL. Yeah. So it actually points you to, FCW-bank, right? So hackers will take some of these techniques, right, to kind of like, because like Wei Ting was saying, right, we tend to use our system one thinking, very fast, very quick to react. So we might not notice the slight change. And then, if I were to say, let's click into this, in a few seconds, you will see we will be redirected to a fake website.
Hmm.
Okay, now, good thing is that nowadays browsers might have some alerts. Okay, but sometimes, again, we are fast to react. You say, hey, let me just get to it. I don't want my money to be lost. And you can see this looks exactly the same as the original one. Okay, so if we are, if it's unassuming, right, we continue, we go ahead, right, we go down and say, okay, I want to stop that transaction, right, let's go. I'm going to key in my credentials. Okay, let's say I put in my username, a fake username, James1212. And then I key in my password. Yeah, of course, all these are fake credentials. Right, so if I click login, right, so on the website, you just to show you what exactly I keyed in. Okay, so sometimes browser will prompt us whether we want to save that password. But on the right side, you can see on my hacker terminal, right, you can see that, oh, the password and my username is actually in black and white. It's been plain text. It's not in some code that the hackers need to then take some time to crack it. It's immediately available for us. Yeah.
So that is really quite scary for everybody, right? To see this happen in real time, and within a matter of minutes, a fake site can go up. It can be sent to thousands of people. As long as a few key in, you can get access to those
Exactly.
commands, right? And in coming back to our scenario, in Suzanne's situation, and now we'll turn to Victoria. How will the bank react to this, right? Now that there is this dispute, will the bank consider that, it was quite sophisticated, the sites look very similar?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but before I go to that, there is one thing that I wanted to add on what James was just very helpfully demonstrating. So in my line of work, I work quite a lot with people who are almost on the ground, right? So for instance, they go undercover into the scam compounds, they really work with the investigative journalists to figure out how these scams work, how these scammers work. And I think the one thing that I would like everyone to take away is that, it's very easy to think of these people as, just a group of, I don't know, like teens or young people hiding in a room somewhere in some, maybe less developed country. But the reality of the situation is that what we're dealing with is not disparate scammers anymore. It's a very sophisticated machinery, right? So it almost makes more sense to think of these scammers as an incorporated MNC in their own right. So going back to, the example of the fake website, it's not just one group of people that is operating this website. What we'll find is that even within the scammers, different scam groups work with each other and they each have their own expertise. So one might be the hackers or the programmers, then someone else will be, your marketing distributors, and then someone else yet will be the one who, specializes in moving the laundered funds. And then they all contract with each other in their own, I guess, honor among thieves way. and that's why it's so difficult. I mean, you might have been looking at that demonstration and been thinking, oh, but I know James was able to do it, but that's because he's trained in this. But the reality is that there's so many people, or the people who can do this, their services are so easily accessed by fellow criminals, right? Okay, anyway, enough of the digression. I now return to Eunice's question. So Susan wants to know, what should she do now, right? And basically, will she be liable for these transactions? So just to set the context, I think the government knows very well that a lot of these scams are very sophisticated, and there have been attempts to kind of balance the situation. Because on the one hand, you want to compensate so-called, I will use the word innocent for the reason that I'll come to in a bit. You want to compensate the victims. But at the same time, you cannot be punishing the banks because they are also not the ones responsible for the scam, right? And in a situation where you cannot find the scammer, the question is, where do the losses lie? So in Singapore, there are several operator frameworks. So one of them is the MAS's shared responsibility framework. I think that's the most prominent one. That one has a limited application. So that one strictly applies to phishing scams. This is not a phishing scam. This is, well, at least in this scenario, it's not a phishing scam. It's a credit card fraud, right? So that falls outside the shared responsibility framework. The Association of Banks in Singapore also has another rule, which is that where there are unauthorized transactions, a customer's liability should be limited to about $100. Okay. So then the question is this considered an unauthorized transaction? Because if you ask Susan, Susan's going to be, of course, I didn't sign up to set up someone else's mobile wallet. I did not actually authorize this, right? But, the situation contemplates that she had received the OTP and she had entered that OTP of her own so-called free will, right? And when this question of authorization is assessed from the perspective of the banks, then the banks will say, but it was authorized. The correct user was sent the correct OTP, and that person indeed entered the OTP and signed up for this transaction. So that's where it gets a bit iffy. Does this $100 limit apply or not? And honestly, it's not clear. Sometimes it may be down to the goodwill of the bank, whether the bank wants to absorb these charges or not, maybe a portion of these charges. But it's definitely not a clear-cut case that, Susan can just walk away. The other thing that I would briefly add is that, this $100 liability limit, right? Of course, Susan wants to rely on it. But even if we are to assume that the bank says, okay, I accept that this is an unauthorized transaction, this $100 rule has a second caveat. And that caveat is that the person who's seeking the benefit of that rule, the person who wants to say, hey, I'm only going to pay maximum $100, that person needs to make sure that he or she is not grossly negligent. And what is negligence? So negligence is a legal kind of concept. And very simply put, someone is negligent when he or she acts in a way that the reasonable person would not have, right? So then that's where we have these interesting discussions, right? Would the reasonable person receiving this OTP that says setting up mobile wallet have still entered this OTP or not?
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's a very interesting discussion because of everything we've heard so far, right? As in, we know that these scammers are preying on these psychological levers, these technological levers. Can the reasonable person really be, I guess, can the reasonable person be said to not be susceptible to these things? And I can see arguments both ways, to be honest. I really can. I think it's a very difficult question. And I would say, Eunice, correct me if I'm wrong from FIDReC's perspective, but I would say to a large extent, it will still fall upon the largesse of the bank.
Yeah, so Victoria, you mentioned FIDReC, but I think for the benefit of the audience who may not know FIDReC, that just invite you to explain what is FIDReC.
Oh no, I you're going to help me. You're going to have to help me with that.
Because okay, FIDReC stands for the Financial Industry Disputes Resolution Center. But that's not the important thing you have to remember. The important thing is what Victoria will now share about what you can do when you come to FIDReC.
So FIDReC will help you mediate in cases where you have a dispute concerning your bank account, and your banking relationship. More importantly, FIDReC is staffed by wonderful people such as Eunice. So I would highly recommend anyone in a situation like this to approach FIDReC to see what they can do. They can help as a mediator between you and your financial institution.
Thank you, Victoria. And I think that for the benefit of everyone, you've set out really clearly for us what are the things that we can expect when we try and negotiate with the banks ourselves, right? That's always the first step as to whether or not there's any goodwill that they can offer us. You mentioned that first we should look at whether the transaction is unauthorized or authorized, and there are different perspectives on that. But I think recognizing that there are those different perspectives helps everybody to take a more reasonable approach to the issue. And the second thing is we do have to examine ourselves to see whether any conduct on our part can be considered negligence or even gross negligence. And I think you didn't mention this expressly, but you did sort of suggest that for different banks, they would also have different terms and conditions.
Yes.
Right? And that would be important as well.
Yes.
Okay, so that is for Suzanne's situation. And we've got a few questions coming in from the audience that I think we can take now because they are on this topic of phishing email. So thank you for those questions. So one question is about the phishing emails, right? James, will opening the emails and viewing any attachments, will that on its own result in some kind of malware infection? Yeah. Is it just one click that can expose us?
Opening up the email most of the time would be fine. When I say open, meaning like, okay, you have this email where you just want to read the content, right? Without clicking anything, just open up and read. Most of the time it is okay. Now where the problem comes is the next step, which is, wherever there are links, wherever there are attachments, right? Especially links that, you don't know where it goes to, which is earlier on when I, try to hover over that link, was to show that, by hovering over, you will reveal where the actual URL is going to, right? Which is a very important thing. And this is something that on your mobile phone, you cannot really do, right? Of course, you can copy paste, but, on mobile, when you copy paste, you try to hold and click and hold, it becomes very dangerous, right? If you don't time it well, you might end up clicking into it, right? That's why going to your computer, to view the email, it's a preferred choice. That's for links. When it comes to attachments, that's where you want to be really, really careful with a few attachments, especially, right? For the audiences, do take note when someone sends you things like .svg, right? These are graphics, right? But nowadays, in recent days, right, scammers are learning also how to, or they've advanced to using SVG to hide malwares. Other type of malwares may include zip files, exes, right? You only see files with ending with a .exe. These are applications that can run on computer, especially the Windows computer. If you see .apk, right, these are applications that can run on Android phones. Even sometimes when you go to sites, and then you start seeing something's downloading, and then you see a .apk, that's where your alarm bell should start going off, right? Because these will run. Some of them may automatically run on your device and start installing. Yeah.
So which means that, number one, try and hover first, or if you're on your mobile device and there's no hovering, you just kind of hold on it, right? I think that can show the link.
It can, but it's very dangerous.
Okay.
So maybe I would suggest that if you see something, and you're not too sure, wait. I think in this day and age, everything can wait, right? Missing an email within an hour or two, I don't think any life will be lost. Unless it's an emergency, someone would have called you, right? So, guys, we can hold off a bit. It's better to view it on your device. Yeah.
Okay, so
And maybe just one more
Yep.
point, right? And that's got to do with the email, right? So if let's say you see that email, and you see the links and then when you see the content, you start to get really suspicious. Verify it with someone, right? If it's a corporate email, verify it with the IT team, send it to them. You can forward as attachment or just report it. The IT team most of the time on their back end they should be able to view it. If let's say it's nothing to do with corporate, it's your own personal email, report it to the scam shield, and I believe someone will be able to address it. Of course, if not, you can always check in with someone who knows more than you, and they can help you to verify, especially when in doubt.
Right. So, James, you've actually also answered a question about malware hiding behind images, right? By your description of how scammers can use graphics to hide links. Yeah. So some of the, when you hover over, some of the files to look out for are .svg, .exe, .zip, .apk. Those are some
to name a
things.
few.
Just to name a few. Okay. But the rule, according to James, is if something looks suspicious, not quite right, just check, hold on first. And that takes us to another question that I'll turn to Weijian for, because it's a question about, is there some resource that documents all the scams, the details, the different modes that it takes place so that we can check against that site?
Okay, so I'm going to helpfully refer everyone to our colleagues over in the SPF family. They have a Scam Shield website. That's a repository with a lot of anti-scam resources. Teaches you how to identify scams or how to install certain things like Scam Shield and how to use it. I think we have other colleagues in the National Crime Prevention Council as well who document some of these things. So do look to our enforcement agencies. I think they have been very helpful and they have put out quite a lot of information out there. Yeah.
Okay, so Scam Shield is the website, and Scam Shield also has the hotline number, right, which we can all call
1799.
1799. Easy to remember, 24 hours, you can call at any time. Okay, there are a few more questions, but we do have time right at the end. Let me just move to the next scenario first so that we can cover more ground. The next scenario is an impersonation scam where Mrs. Lam receives a phone call from an unknown number introducing herself as Natasha from ABC Insurance Singapore. Natasha sounds very professional and also gives an employee ID number. She tells Mrs. Lam that, you have been enrolled in a half-year trial for a platinum critical illness package, and the trial is about to expire, and you will need to pay $3,000 annually if you don't cancel the policy. So Mrs. Lam is immediately alarmed, and Natasha says, don't worry, you can still cancel this package if you act immediately. And so you will need to, number one, give me your NRIC number, address, bank account details so that I can verify your identity. And next, I need you to make a cancellation deposit of $500 so that I can process the cancellation. Natasha also says that this deposit will be refunded to Mrs. Lam within 7 days after the cancellation is processed. So Natasha, in a very sophisticated scam, also emails Mrs. Lam an email with a cancellation form. The form does have the ABC Insurance logo, although the email address is slightly different. So something like what Weijian and James had told us about earlier. Now, because Mrs. Lam felt very pressured, she went ahead to make the transfer. She never receives the refund of the deposit, and that was when she realized it's a scam. And not only that, she's also very worried because she has given her personal information to the scammers. Okay, so just like the first scenario, we're going to run through this with the help of James, Weijian, and Victoria. Okay, starting again with Weijian. Okay, Weijian, can you walk us through this scam and tell us, what Mrs. Lam could have done? What were the signs that she could have watched for?
Yeah, so I think here I can introduce a few other principles of persuasion. So the first would be the principle of authority. We tend to believe an authoritative figure, and in this case, at the beginning, what Mrs. Lam got was basically authentication numbers, someone claiming to be an official from the company. So authority doesn't necessarily have to just be someone in a position of authority. It can also be an expert. For example, the expert panel right down here. You are probably more likely to believe us than to believe someone who doesn't have a knowledge in this field. So that's the first. The second would be the norm of reciprocity. So what happens is that scammers often try to pretend that they had done the victim a favor. And this is very common in, say, credit card scams. So for example, they'll say, hey, we have detected a fraudulent transaction, but don't worry, we have kind of like cancelled it for you, we have stopped it short. And in this case, basically, what the agent is claiming is that, I've managed to stop your policy from expiring. So don't worry, we've got it all under control. And the norm of reciprocity is something very human. We live in a social society where if someone does us a favor, we are more likely to return it. So we become very receptive to the demands of the other party. So this party looks like a genuine authority, has done us a favor, so more or less you will be more receptive towards their request. So what she should have done, I think I echo what James was saying earlier, is that in this day and age, I think there's no need to hurry. If there's something genuine, the government or these companies, they won't rush you to do it in the next 5 minutes. Not because we are lazy employees, but because we know that scammers often deploy these tactics. So we try not to pressure people or put people in the same scenario to confuse people. So in this day and age, really, there's no need to hurry. If there's something that feels a little bit off, and just put down the phone maybe, consult your family or friends. Talk to somebody about it. Don't keep silent and don't keep to yourself.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you get a call from someone who is purporting to be an authority, they give you all these details like their ID number and so on to make themselves authoritative. We can maybe take a pause and question ourselves whether this is a real authority figure. And the next thing is when something you called it reciprocity, right? Which means that, there is some action, right, that the person has said that they've done for us or they can help us with. And that will also make us more likely to let our guard down. So if we pay attention to these two things, we could, if we were in Mrs. Lam's shoes, maybe take a pause and call Scam Shield at that point in time. But now that this has happened, Victoria, it's not just about losing that deposit, but also loss of personal information, bank account details. How serious is this, and how should Mrs. Lam react in this kind of scenario?
So I think the issue is that at this point, when she's just realized she's been scammed, she doesn't know how serious it is yet. Because what we know of scammers is that sometimes they're very good at laying in wait. They might not deploy your details immediately, right? Because that's when they might think, but that scam is fresh on your mind, right? They may wait a few months before using your details for some nefarious purpose. So I would say, if I was Mrs. Lam in this situation, I would just take all of the precautions. Even if nothing has happened to me yet, apart from the $500 loss, I would use the kill switch in my mobile banking app. All major banks are supposed to provide a kill switch just to make sure that anything else that hasn't gone out yet stays there. Right. I would report it to my bank and alert them of it. All banks have a fraud hotline. This is just really so that they can also help to look out for any other transactions, suspicious transactions that might be taking place using your account or your details. You never know, maybe in a week, 2 weeks, someone pretending to be you will call up your bank and try to take a loan, for instance, right? If she's given any card details and canceled those, ask for replacements. Nowadays, don't need to pay money. All of the replacement cards are free.
Yes.
And then, of course, she should also report this to the authorities. So, of course, as the other panelists have said, it's worth reporting on Scam Shield just to spread the message and make sure other people don't fall prey to it. But I would also say go a step further and report this to the police. And I say that because when you report something to the police, you tell the police, hey, look, this happened to me. This is the information I gave. You create an official report of what has happened to you. So the good thing is that, in the future, let's say someone uses her NRIC, uses her address, uses her banking history to set up, let's say, another bank account, right? On paper, if that account is used to scam someone else, it looks like Mrs. Lam is the one who is involved.
Yes.
Right? And without, this very important paper trail where she has told the police, hey, I these were compromised and anything, is not me. I think that there could be quite a lot of explaining that has to take place.
That's a really helpful pointer because we often think about what to do to minimize our loss, which is what you mentioned about the kill switch, reporting to the bank. But the police report is also very important. Some people feel they don't want to trouble the police, right? It's not so much money, $500.
Yes.
And then they just let it be. But as Victoria has shared, it is important for yourself to protect yourself just in case your details are then later used for criminal purposes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So that is what Mrs. Lam should do to minimize her loss, also protect herself. Victoria, one more follow-up question for you is, given the small amount or relatively small amount, our first scenario is 5,000, this is 500. Is it worthwhile for Mrs. Lam to try and pursue this in any way?
So I think that's where also the police report comes in handy, right? The good thing about the Singapore police is that they have set up this thing called the Anti-Scam Command Center, where a lot of the major banks are co-located in Police Cantonment Complex. And that means that if your police report is lodged in a timely enough fashion, there's a good chance that the monies might be still in Singapore because they have managed to get the process of extracting details from a police report and freezing the associated bank account down to such an art, right? Of course, that the precondition of that is that she's timely in making the police report. She doesn't hem and haw for a couple of days before deciding, okay, maybe I better lodge a police report. If she waits that period, there's a very good chance that the money will be spirited to several different accounts and then eventually out of Singapore. And once it's out of Singapore, that's where the headache really begins, right? Because the Singapore police cannot do anything. If the amount were substantial, several $1 million, the high hundreds of thousands, yes, it might be worth, pursuing private recovery, getting a lawyer to help you get disclosure orders, freezing orders, cross-border. But for $500, you would, to be honest, be throwing good money after bad.
So I think we do have to assess our own situation, as Victoria says, in order to determine what type of recourse we can pursue. And I think, James, now coming to you, because we do have some questions coming in as well from a technical perspective. So this is related to the scenario, but there's a question about, is it true if I'm on the line with scammers for a certain period of time, they can steal information from my phone? And this is also related to another comment, from Anonymous, which says, it is wise to answer unknown calls and engage the callers by telling them they'll be reported to the police. So two things. Should we stay on the line with scammers? Should we tell them we're reporting them to the police?
I think answering the first question, right? Should we stay on the line? Can the attackers or the scammers, take something from our phone? First and foremost, I would usually say don't engage them, right? And the reason is because, while it's quite complex, to really steal things from your phone, but nowadays, we are in the age of AI, right? And you don't know whether they are also using your phone, using your voice and recording it, right? To then, extend that damage, right, to your family members. Yeah, right?
So what you mean is that they record your voice and then they use AI to then use that for...
Correct. So then they make the next call, right? And that call is targeted at your family member, right? But it's in your voice because, you've stayed long enough on the line to engage with them, and then they can use that voice to train their model to, mimic your voice, your intonation, right? Where you are, and then from there, you might not be the one, you might not be the victim, but your family members might be then. Right, that's the first thing. The other thing is that, while it's hard to directly say, whether they can compromise your device over the line, but let's say, we take one step back and say, oh, you've clicked on a link, right, and that link, installed a malware on your phone already, right, and they know that, hey, I know where you live, through social engineering, where they discover your information, or you give it out, at some point in time. And then they engage you on the line, right? So that you are not paying attention to your phone. Okay, true. That might happen. Yeah. And could you repeat
The second is about engaging callers and telling them that you report them to the police. Maybe some people also want to, engage them further to waste their time, or something like that. Would you recommend that?
I think on that note, not really, right? Do report to the authorities still, but don't engage them in that manner. And the reason is because, then you're giving them intel, right? Intelligence that, hey, this model is not working, right? You're edging them on to say, go and change your model, right? Don't use this method. The authorities already know, right? Let's change another one. And before everyone knows how to, catch them, right? They change their modus operandi, and then, it makes it harder for the rest of the community.
Okay, so don't engage scammers. You might inadvertently disclose some information. Your voice could be used with AI to, deceive your family and friends. And the last point would be that you could cause more harm than good. Don't
Unintentionally, yeah.
Unintentionally. Okay, so that's important for us to know. And Just before we move on to the next scenario, just coming back to Weijian, in such kind of authority scams, sometimes we also have situations where the person on the phone will say, I'm going to transfer your call to the police. I'm going to transfer your call to the MAS. And then someone else comes on and makes us believe them even more. Since you are from the MAS, could you tell us once and for all, do these transfers actually happen in real life? So if we hear that, does it mean that is a scam,
Yeah, so no government official will ever ask you to transfer any money out, all right? So just gonna put that to rest.
And I think also, I mean, so in my former life, I was a prosecutor, right? And I have never even been able to transfer a call to a different department of the government. As in, unless things have changed massively in the amount of time that I've been out, I don't think that's possible. Even if I wanted to call MAS or a colleague at CD or something, I would have to pick up my phone and dial the 8 digits the old-fashioned way.
Yes.
So no such thing as one government agency transfer to another. We're not that seamless yet.
Okay. So although it is true, our government says, no wrong door, right? We can
No
always
wrong door.
go to different departments and we will get help. But take note,
No transfers.
there's no transferring, right? Our government is not so synced up that they can transfer calls from one agency to another, even one department to another. Okay, so that would be a red flag for all of us. Okay, let's move to scenario number 3 this time, which is about purchasing tickets online, something that happens now a lot. So we have John, who is a hot play fan. And one day he comes across an advertisement for a pair of hot play tickets selling for $100, which is a great deal. Okay. And John goes ahead with this purchase, although he hasn't used this website before. He sees that there is a picture of the concert tickets, there's a 5-star rating and some reviews, so he feels quite convinced. The seller contacts John, asks him to pay the full sum first to secure the tickets, right? Otherwise, they'll be sold off. John was initially wary, but he didn't want to lose those tickets. Okay, so he did make the transfer. Unfortunately, after the transfer, the seller does not reply to John's many attempts to contact him, and the listing has also been taken down. So now let's go through this scenario too, because we do have lots of concerts in Singapore nowadays. James, do you have any advice on how to differentiate between legitimate sellers and scammers, especially for purchasing of concert tickets or other types of products online?
I think first and foremost, the official channels, right? Some of them like Systics, right? These are like official channels that you should definitely go to. And sure, sometimes we might be tempted by the scalpers, right? Or sometimes some people really do have to let go of the tickets, and then you be like, okay, I want a cheap deal. But then again, do note that we don't know them personally, and even though no matter how much precautions you take, you never know, right, whether someone can just not send you the tickets after you've paid them. So first and foremost is check for whether all these are official ticket sellers. Do take note at the same time when you're going to them, right? Their URL, their domains. Right. For example, right, if I use a more an easier example, is that all government websites today use .gov.sg as the ending, and nothing else, right? So understanding the baseline is very important, right? And let's say that hey, there's a ticket coming up, there's a concert coming up, and you want to get some tickets. Look out for the official websites first, right? Prepare beforehand, before that actual event comes up. Right, so that at that time crunch, right, when you're rushing to get tickets, you won't be led to a wrong site and then you make the wrong purchase. Right. Secondly, is if you have to get it off someone else, at least see whether I don't think it's a good advice, but see whether you can at least meet them in person and get the actual meet them in person before you transfer money. But even then, I'll still revert back to the first one, and worst come to worst, miss that concert, and
But save your
yeah, and just yourself that money over.
Victoria, just jumping to you, because
Yeah.
from a legal perspective,
Yes.
would you suggest that there's a safer way to buy tickets not from an authorized seller?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be fair to a lot of these marketplaces, like, your carousel, etc., they have ways, they have introduced ways rather, to offer some buyer protection. So, carousel, where I know a lot of these tickets, so-called off-market tickets are sold. They have what they call Caropay, which does come with online, like inbuilt buyer protection. So if the item sold is, not as described, or it doesn't work, or it's unshipped, then you can have recourse through that. If you make payments through, for instance, PayPal, I think that also comes with some degree of protection. And all of these things can be quite useful in situations such as tickets, because, after you transfer the money, you might well be given a PDF ticket. And then it's only when you try to scan and enter that you realize, oh, actually, this person sent the same PDF to 10 different people, and the only person who managed to enter was the person who reached the venue first, right? So it's that latency that the scammers are hoping you will fall for. So they're hoping that you won't find out until it's way too late. All your money has been collected and dissipated already. But at the same time, I know it's difficult because a lot of the private sellers on Carousel don't want to accept Caropay, because then they can't cash out immediately, right? So there's always going to be this tension. I would say that if you are going to be buying tickets online, then you have to be cognizant that I could well be scammed.
Yeah.
And if I die want to buy from someone who refuses to accept Caropay, then, is something that you just have to keep at the back of your mind.
Okay, so I think when it comes to buying tickets and taking a risk when you buy it from an unauthorized source, Victoria's point is just be aware that you are taking that risk.
Yes.
You might be turned away at the turnstiles.
Yeah.
So now your kids say, oh no, mommy, daddy, why cannot enter? What?
Yeah. Okay, so this one we have to just make our own wise judgments. And to help us do that, Weijian, in this kind of scenario, are there also some other psychological tricks that we can be wary of?
So for concert tickets, I think unfortunately it is what I call a perfect storm of pressures.
So it's really scarcity. It's really scarce.
Exactly. So there's real scarcity there.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, because you are really passionate about the concert, you're also more likely to be risk-taking in terms of trying to obtain that ticket, because they're only going to be here in the region once in a while. They're touring the whole world. They're just in Singapore for 1 or 2 days. And you're competing really with the rest of the region. I think we saw in the Taylor Swift concerts that really everyone from all over Southeast Asia poured in. So it's really, there's also a time pressure component here. Like, time is running out, like from the time you didn't manage to get a ticket until the concert itself. So there's really a perfect storm of pressures coming in. And it does make one more predisposed to this. So I guess, unfortunately, for concert goers, like, maybe take James' advice. Just give it a miss, because you are predisposing yourself to this risk. It is really quite risky out there. So maybe really just give it a miss, or if you really, really want to take the risk, I think meeting the buyer in person would be one of the safest options. Yeah.
Okay. And on this topic of modes of payment, we do have a question about using credit cards to make payment, and whether that is a better mode, because you can ask for a chargeback, right? If you notice there is a fraudulent transaction or you didn't get what you were promised. Victoria, could I turn to you for this one? Is it a high success chance for that?
I think, again, it will boil down to the T&C of the bank. But there is a good point in there, which is that your Visa or your MasterCard will have some baseline degree of buyer protection. Now, of course, the difficulty is that if you are using your credit card to pay, especially if it's not through, let's say, a legitimate transactor such as PayPal, then you might well be exposing your credit card details, right? When you enter that into a website that, say, maybe you're not so familiar with. So, it's not the perfect solution. If the concern is maybe the tickets are not what I'm paying for, then yes, it does go some way to address that. But again, it does have other attendant risks.
Yeah, and I think for the benefit of those who may not be familiar with this phrase chargeback, maybe Victoria can invite you to explain that.
So basically, whenever you transact using your credit card, what it does is that it places a charge against your account, right? And that's paid later on. It's a postpaid situation. So in the situation where, let's say, the tickets were undelivered, or you have any good that's undelivered, you can raise a dispute against that transaction with your credit card. And usually what happens is that credit card will go and check with the merchant vendor and see if there's anything that can be done. And in some situations, it can lead to the charge that was placed against your card being reversed or removed.
And I think one important thing to note is in those chargeback scenarios, there are some limits in place. So that, for example, if it is treated as a card present transaction, you don't have the ability to request a charge.
Yeah.
And there are some other exceptions.
Yes.
Would you like to share some common ones? Okay, so I think we just take note that in terms of this chargeback, it is a process available for credit card
Yes.
holders, but there are exceptions to that. So, for example, if your physical card was presented,
Yes.
even for e-wallets, which are treated as authorized in a sense, as Victoria
I
explained.
think at the end of the day, there are going to be too many factual situations to really give a hard and fast rule. So I think what is the most useful for the audience to know is that yes, there are some protections. Whether they apply or not will depend on who you're banking with, the T's and C's, and of course to a certain extent what the vendors is as well, right?
Yes. Thank you, Victoria, for that. Okay, let's...
Actually, Eunice, can I just add on one more thing, right? Which is, I think on the topic of credit card, especially, right? Or even even your debit card, I'm not sure if you're aware, but do set the alert limit, or
Low.
yeah, to as low as it can be as low as like 1 cent, right? But of course, do note that the lower you set, of course, the more alerts you're gonna get on your banking apps and SMSs and things like that. But at least it gives you an idea, when things are going wrong, right? Let's say you really want to use your credit card, but the next on first transaction it may seem okay, right? But what happens if that same credit card is being used for other transactions that you didn't authorize, right? And having that immediate alert, it brings back to our earlier topic about that latency. You don't have that wait time until you look at your bank statements, right? Immediately you're alerted, you can make a report, and then you can potentially stop losses earlier on.
Thanks for that tip as well, James. So set our notification alerts on the credit card. And I would also add, based on what we see at FIDReC, take note of how these alerts are being delivered to you.
Yeah.
If you're having alerts delivered to you by SMS, when you're traveling, make sure you still have the ability to receive SMS. Some people just rely only on Wi-Fi when they're traveling and they don't receive SMSs. That one would be your responsibility to make sure you receive those alerts. Okay, let's come to our last scenario. We will still have time for question and answer at the end, so please feel free to continue putting those on in Pigeonhole. Okay, our last scenario is about an investment opportunity that Tom had found out about because he was added into a chat group on investment tips. He saw that some of his friends and contacts were in that group. There were also some well-known names there. Over time, the group shared information about crypto investment opportunities, and many members said they tried it and made lots of money. So Tom was very curious, clicked on the link, downloaded the investment platform app that everyone else was using. He followed the instructions to register an account and started to invest. And the account showed him that as he started to invest more money, he appeared to make more profits. At first, he was able to withdraw those profits quite easily, but after deciding to put in his largest sum yet of $20,000, it was then that he found he could not withdraw anymore. There were some problems. He tried to contact the platform and they told him that, because it's such a large sum, he now has to pay an additional admin fee for some money laundering checks. So Tom was quite desperate because he wanted his money back and so paid those fees. Unfortunately for Tom, later he realized that, he was being ignored, the money wasn't coming back to him, and he was a victim of a scam. We will start with Victoria again for this one, because Victoria has actually handled cases involving cryptocurrency. So I'm going to invite her to share with us what is cryptocurrency and whether that is sort of an investment that buy.
Yes. So it's a topic that is somewhat dear to my heart because our firm specializes in quite a lot of digital assets work. So in short, I would say that I've seen the highs and really the lows associated with that space, right? In short, to answer your question, cryptocurrency, you can think of it as virtual money. Instead of being issued by a bank or a central bank or a government, it uses a network of computers as a ledger to essentially keep track of who owns what, right? As to whether it can be an investment product or not, I think that's where things get a bit tricky. It can be, and it has been, for people who understand it and who are properly equipped to trade in it. Okay. I think that the thing that people need to be clear about is that it differs from a lot of conventional assets in many ways. The first way is that very often it's not backed by any underlying assets. So for instance, a share in a company, you are literally buying a stake in the company, right? The company has underlying assets that is inherent value. In cryptocurrency, you're just buying a token. There's nothing, that guarantees the value of that token. The second difference is that very often it's not regulated by any authorities. So you don't have someone looking over the shoulder, or you don't have a regulator coming in to make sure that there are not manipulative practices, deceptive practices such as insider trading, pump and dump, etc. So when you trade in that space, know that there could be a lot of people who are taking advantage or creating market movements that you as one investor are not privy to. And then the third reason or the third way that it differs is, I would say, its inherent volatility. A lot of people trade crypto to profit from minute by minute price changes. And that means it's not uncommon to see tokens entirely collapse in value. Billions of dollars just wiped out. And I would say it's very difficult for a retail or a layman investor to truly get their heads around. And in terms of whether it can be an investment product, let's just put it this way. I would say that a good third of the cases that I deal with involve some degree of crypto. And even then, I do not touch it. So I would just say, approach it with a large degree of caution. And indeed, if anyone is telling you they guarantee you returns, then for sure, it's a scam. Because the most seasoned crypto investors will tell you that that's not possible.
No guarantee.
There's no such thing as guaranteed profits.
And Weijian, maybe coming to you for the official MAS view on this.
Yeah. So just gonna put on my MAS hat for a second here and say that cryptocurrencies are not recommended for retail investment. But I guess just taking it off for a while and talking about this scam situation right now, I think it's very timely to just introduce just one last persuasion technique, if you will indulge me. So basically, I want to talk about the technique of social proof. So what happened here is basically he has been added to a chat room with a lot of other people, and they are all validating this. So this is what we call social proof. And I'm sure we witness this in our everyday lives. For example, going to an unknown hawker center, what do? At least for me, I would tend to look at the queues that are a little bit longer.
Mm.
Those tend to be the slightly better queues. So in when it comes to something where there's a lot of uncertainty, and cryptocurrency is one of those things, people don't really understand the underlying fundamentals very well. But at the same time, you're taken in by greed. It's like, oh, look at the crypto price; it's going all the way up. If I don't get in now, I'm going to miss the boat.
Yeah.
So you're taken in by that greed. It is capturing your attention, but you're not so sure whether it's something you should go into. You'll start looking for information elsewhere.
Mm.
And this is where the victim could have just looked at the chat room, seen that, oh, wow, so many people are benefiting from it. I better join in. So yeah, if I were to leave one piece of advice here, it would be, if it's too good to be true, it usually is. Yeah.
So when we look out for social proof, like you say, we can also just make sure we check not just with the group that we're added into, but look at more sources, right? Make sure that we remind ourselves if something seems really too good to be true, we should be extra alert.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to add also that in the previous example, we did talk about looking at 5-star reviews.
Yes.
That is a form of social proof as well. And often a lot of restaurants or a lot of businesses are very aware of this. And I can't remember, but the last time I went to one of these restaurants, they gave me a free ice cream for giving them a 5-star review. So there are a lot of businesses who really understand the value of social proof and use it to their advantage.
Yeah, and I think, James, you might also want to add that some of this might not even be real people, right? Yeah.
I mean, some of them could be bots, or fake accounts, or sometimes it could be just a campaign, right, run to bring down a company, just by giving them some reviews first, and then making them look real, right, and then afterwards they deploy their tactics against you.
And just staying with you to talk about the risk of downloading apps, because for this one there was an investment app that had to be downloaded by Tom. What are the risks for that, and how do we know whether we're downloading something legitimate or not?
I think first and foremost, I think it goes back to downloading from reputable sources. Google Play, right, the Google Play Store, and the App Store, Apple Store, right? These are two common ones, more reputable ones that we can at least trust. But even then, for example, let's say Google, if I'm not mistaken, we can create apps and list it up there. Versus let's say Apple Store, right? There's a premium to it. You have to pay to be able to list the apps. So that itself might deter certain scammers from going to that area. Versus, let's say, the Android side, we are a little bit more vulnerable in that sense. So knowing that, right, then the next step is looking at the apps. Who created those? Do they belong to the actual companies, right? Going back to the earlier point, someone in the question also asked, what about WhatsApp? Even applications like WhatsApp, you have to verify whether that application is indeed created under Meta Group, right? Or someone could just use that logo, look alike, maybe change the color to a different tinge of green. Put a phone, maybe that phone icon has a small little landline that you can't see. Right? Things like this, we need to start spotting in this day and age. To be able to be more careful with applications. And then the next point would be then do regular updates, right? Because think about it, right? From a business point of view, like the business needs to continue sustaining. It needs revenue. It needs to make sure that the consumers are constantly using the applications. Money has to go into the maintenance of it, right? And then comes the coding side, right? So they will make sure that things are constantly patched. Of course, sometimes the apps could be buggy. Yeah, it could be outdated, or there could be some code that they didn't know could break, or it could introduce malware. Right. So when do not put off updates.
Okay.
Whenever the app says, hey, it's time for an update, please do it. A lot of times we don't like because it causes inconvenience. We want to use the app now, right? That actually puts us in a more vulnerable spot.
Okay.
Or I would say even, of course we can delve into the fine details, right? You check the URL, you check the logo, you check the font, see if it's consistent or not. But on a broader level, we should be more circumspect about the how open we are to receiving this information in the first place, right? So, the case study contemplates that, what's his name? Tom. Tom was added into an investment group. So that, for me, if I was added to a chat group filled with people that I don't know, even if it was, someone I knew who pulled me in, I feel like I would exit immediately. And I would say that for me, a lot of the work of prevention is cutting out the input that comes from unknown sources to begin with. It's the same thing if you see an unknown number, don't pick up, right? Why give them that chance to then hook you, right? And for me, I would use that same logic to something like this, large Telegram groups, large WhatsApp groups. I mean, it's just way too much information. Why let yourself be put in that position where you could then fall victim?
And your point about ignoring unknown numbers is also one of the questions that came up to ask, why aren't the panel not advising participants never to answer calls from unknown numbers?
Okay, well,
we have now. Would there be a reason we should still pick up calls, you think?
To be honest, I can't really think of one. Of course, you can't say never, right? Because that there might really be an emergency situation. But there is one example which I do like to give, and this happened back again when I was still a DPP. So I had the police looking for this individual, and the police had been calling the number which they had to call. The guy refused to pick up. Okay, so eventually the deadline was drawing close. So then I told the very nice investigation officer, okay, I think you should go down and visit him, right? Is it that he's absconded or he's decided not to cooperate, or what is it? Then the officer goes down to his house, knocks on the door, with the badge and everything. And then the guy's there, and then the officer asks him, why have you been ignoring my calls? And then the guy just said, well, I thought you were a scammer. And guess what happened to him for all the ignored calls? Absolutely nothing. The IO said, well, okay, fine, fair enough, right? Thank you for being vigilant. And I can confirm that indeed I am from the police. Here, follow me back to the station now, please.
Okay.
So, yes.
One scenario that comes up sometimes at FIDReC is someone ignores calls from the bank who's trying to verify whether a transaction is made on the pretext that it's a scam. I don't know whether Weijian, you have any advice from the MAS perspective about how you know whether a call is coming from a genuine bank or not.
I guess I can't speak for MAS, but personally, what I would do, and generally this is a good advice, if you are really suspicious about the incoming call, you could always put down, search for the bank's official hotline, and then call the bank to verify that they have been trying to contact you. So now, most of the banks basically prioritize fraud or scams. So when you dial into the hotline, I know we are all usually very irritated by the robot menus and going through all of them to get to a customer service officer. But if you actually select the menu for a scam, you will probably get through a lot faster. So do just call the bank back. It is not difficult too, and now they do prioritize your call. Check if they have been trying to reach out to you.
Okay, so some advice for us, and I also see James nodding in agreement. If you get a call from a bank officer, you can always put down, call back on the official hotline to verify. Yeah?
I think on the other side is, I think from my recent experience with one of the organizations is that I had to make a call. I initiated a call, right? And I know that I don't know where they're gonna call from. They may not call from the same number that I'm dialing in because it's a hotline, right? So then I asked them for, okay, what is the number that I should be receiving, right? And in certain organizations, maybe not all, but sometimes they will tell you that, hey, my number will end with something, right? So then at least you know what to keep a lookout for. Then at least you know that, okay, maybe that one I pick up, maybe the rest I tend to then ignore. Yeah, so at least do take the initiative to go and find out things, right? And then verify with the organization or the authority. Then.
Oh, and last plug for NCPC, please download Scam Shield. It will do a lot of the screening work for you.
Yes. Okay, so download Scam Shield, verify your sources, and from Victoria as well. Remember the story that if the police are trying to find you, they will find you.
They will find you.
And
They will find you.
you will not be punished for some small delay or
Chula. I'm not here advocating that you should hide from the police by pretending that you think they're scammers. Because they will find you regardless. Is the moral of the story.
Okay, and before we wrap up, as promised, let's delve into some of the questions that have been asked. We'll start with one from an audience member who is trying to do the responsible thing and has asked, what else can we do besides blocking and reporting scam call numbers? How can we contribute to this fight against scams? Maybe James, you could take that one,
Yeah, I
and
think
anyone else can chip in.
maybe first and foremost is the earlier on mentioned, right, the Scam Shield app. It's really, really important. Maybe as an additional one, it's if you have a little bit of budget, right, do opt for a good antivirus. Right, because sometimes you just don't know what you click into, right? And certain antiviruses can also block you from going to certain websites, right? But of course, do not go for the free ones, because you don't know what they put inside the free antiviruses. This is what I tell my students and all, is that, if you're not paying for it, you are the product.
Yeah.
They're harvesting your data, they're getting your information. So things like this are things that we cannot go for free. Things like, antiviruses, some of these products, softwares, think about it, right? They have to sustain it. You know how they sustain it? They're mining your data, they're, compromising your device, and then, probably then attack you at some point, or, selling it off to someone else to make that money.
So make sure we download Scam Shield. Take the step to download a antivirus, and better, there's one that there's a subscription or you pay for, and remember to update it, right?
Yes, we update regularly. It's really, really important.
Anything else from?
Yeah, maybe I can
Yeah,
share a
please,
little bit. So I really agree with the whole idea of Scam Shield. And I'm saying this not because I work in the government. I do recommend all my friends and families to download Scam Shield. So this is actually one of the few nationwide network protection apps out there. There are private companies trying to do this in other countries, but they only get a small subset of it. In Singapore, it's a nationwide program. So we have that advantage. We should really use it. So I think that a lot of times when it comes to scams, unfortunately, when we are in the thick of the moment, when our attention is being dragged elsewhere, we're not able to think through some of the steps or the precautions we need to take. So it's good to take some of these upstream measures before the scam actually happens.
Yeah.
So for example, there are things like, beyond just the antivirus that James was talking about, there's things like money lock, which Victoria alluded to earlier. That you can basically lock your money up and not allow it to be transferred online. So another related strategy I would encourage people to do is basically what James was alluding to earlier as well, the ripple effect. So I believe that we should talk about scams more, gossip about it a little bit more, tell friends and families. Don't feel embarrassed that maybe you fell prey to one. Talk about it, laugh it off, so that at least your social network knows about that scam typology that is emerging, right? So basically, let's form our own network as a community, protect ourselves, ask each other, tell each other about things. Yeah, so at least when our family members know about it, they know to look out for it, and scammers will not be able to attack us so easily. Yeah. So and I guess one last point is that if you do end up in the middle of a scam, just to reiterate the message, nothing is really that urgent. You can just put down the phone. Don't feel paiseh about it. I think somebody once told me that there's this paiseh culture. And we don't dare put down the phone. We want to be polite, but don't feel bad about it. Just put down the phone and find other ways to verify it. Call the bank, talk to friends and family. Someone who from the outside will have a different perspective and may be able to help you with that.
Yeah. And so let's move to another question about verifying callers who claim to be from banks. Some bank staff ask for your information to verify your identity before, carrying on with the call. So this audience member asks, is this fair to the receiver that they have to give out some information first? Is there a way to deal with that? Victoria?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I understand the situation because I do feel like I have been in it myself. I do wish that banks would do that slightly less often. I do know also that sometimes the banks have shifted their methodology a little bit, or their verification methodology. So now instead of asking you for, oh, what's the last 4 digits of your NRIC, right? Or what is your credit card details, ask you to read it out, they will send the OTP to your mobile phone and then ask you to insert that OTP instead. So I do think that it's something that the banks are increasingly more mindful of, and hopefully it will be phased out soon.
And I think, I don't know whether Weijian has any updates to share from MAS about what we can look forward to in terms of improvements in verification.
So I don't really have anything specific from MAS's perspective. But at least what I know is increasingly being done is for the user to call back the bank's official hotline and to check in there. So at least you can refuse the incoming call. So if the incoming call really asks you for your information and you have every right to be suspicious about it, you can refuse to do so and instead put down the phone, call the bank. At least if you call the bank's official hotline and they do ask you for verification, then you know you're not giving it out to the wrong person. Yeah, so always do it the other way around. If you don't want to give it out to an incoming unknown caller, by all means don't do so. Call the bank and check again.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we also take the approach where we're not suggesting you ignore those calls, but do that verification step.
Yes.
And as Victoria mentioned, there are also some banks who will send you an in-app notification.
Yes.
And that will help you to confirm the identity of the
And I think most things nowadays can be done through the banking app itself instead of just talking to them. And I think banking apps historically have been quite hard to spoof. Not impossible, so still be vigilant, but harder to spoof. And then if you know that you're chatting with someone through the app, then that's a secure environment.
Okay, another question. This one is about WhatsApp compromise scams. Okay, it says WhatsApp was compromised after receiving a call on WhatsApp. How did that happen? Because from this audience member's perspective, no OTP was provided. So maybe James, I can turn to you for this one.
I think first and foremost, we need to understand, right, in this day and age, every application, every operating system, right, they are all running codes, right? And some of these codes, is as good as what the developers and their team can, manage at that point in time, right? And sometimes, things get outdated, or, in this particular case, right, what happens was that the WhatsApp application could be, right, that there's a bug, right? And sometimes we call them 0 days, or sometimes we call them vulnerabilities, right? Depending on when they are found. And what the hackers do is that they found out that, hey, I can bypass that WhatsApp application and and access your device directly, right? And because of that, they managed to bypass the OTP function. Yeah. So in situations like this, this is where there's nothing much we can do, right? Or other than let's say updating the applications, or as soon as they send the alert, or the update is available on the Play Store. The other thing would then be that's where the apps like Scam Shields, or apps like antiviruses, that's where the second layer of defenses come in, because what they do is that they can detect any malicious behavior done by the attackers. In an attempt to try to compromise your phone, right, they need to run codes, and some of these codes are very common for mobile devices or for computers, right? So the antiviruses softwares are trained, or they are coded in a way to detect this, and therefore blocking it from being compromised. Yeah.
So the advice is to keep all apps regularly updated and have that second layer of protection by antivirus Scam Shield.
And same for the devices itself, right? Your phone device needs to be regularly patched and updated as well. Yeah. So then don't push it off. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of apps like WhatsApp also give you a list of the devices that your account is signed in on. So it's good practice to just occasionally look at that list and make sure it's not signed on in, a location that you're not familiar with, right? You didn't sign on, let's say, at an airport lounge, and then you left it there where it could be vulnerable.
Yeah. So applications like that these days are like what Victoria mentioned, right? You can check where your last login. On top of that, I think WhatsApp recently also launched additional features, right, to make your device a little bit more secure in your chats, right? There are privacy and security features. So, you know, do you take some time to go and explore them, right, and then enable some of these security features, to make your experience a bit more secure.
Okay, so thank you all panelists for all your insights. We are sadly out of time, so I'm going to wrap up by asking each of you to give us one key point for us to remember from this webinar. We'll start with James and then go to Weijian and Victoria.
I think when it comes to cyber, a lot of times being able to respond, immediately is what we can do, other than the preventive measures. Firefighting has the, stop, drop, and roll, right? Let's say you've caught some fire. I think for cyber, for attacks like this, maybe stop, verify, and report. Right, stop your tracks, don't continue further, verify the sources, and then, if things are suspicious, report them immediately.
Thank you, James. Weijian.
I guess if there's one key message, I think is that all of us are vulnerable to scams. I know that there's this thing where everyone thinks that the elderly are more susceptible to scams. Not necessarily true if you look at the latest statistics by SPF. So do take precautions. Take the time to talk to your community. I'm a little bit of an optimist. I think that Singapore, believe it or not, is probably doing better than most other states in terms of anti-scam measures and in terms of how savvy we are against scams. But I think we can do better. And it all boils down to our more tight-knit communities and networks. If we can talk to each other more about it, share a little bit more, I think one day maybe scammers would say, hey, it's not worth attacking Singapore anymore. Hopefully that day comes. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Victoria.
Every year you ask me this question. Every year I give the same answer, and it's because I genuinely believe it to be the best advice, and it's that prevention is better than cure. In the line of work I do so much asset recovery. So I know how easily it can be to dissipate assets and put them completely outside of the bounds of what's recoverable or not. And I know we've not talked a lot about it today, but the moment the money is out of your account, you are in for a long, painful, and uphill battle. So the best thing to do really is to be vigilant, so that you're not in that position to begin with.
Okay, so just as a quick recap, prevention is better than cure. Always stop, verify, and report. And take note, all of us are vulnerable to scams. We should do what we can to share about it with our family and friends. And with that, I'll have to bring the webinar to a close. The next webinar in the series will be Marriage and Divorce, Understanding Your Rights, Civil Law, which will be happening this Wednesday on 24th of September at 7:30 p.m. The session will cover marital rights and obligations, protection from family violence, legal grounds for divorce, and the therapeutic justice approach of our courts. So panelists will also address how ancillary matters such as asset division, child custody, care and control, and maintenance are resolved, along with where to seek legal and social support. So these and many more webinars are available as part of the Law Awareness Weeks at CDC. You can scan the QR code or visit the website lawawarenessweeks.cdc.gov.sg to register for these and many more. If you would like to watch this webinar again or share it with your family and friends, the recordings of all these Law at CDC webinars will be put up on the Pro Bono SG YouTube channel 2 weeks after the end of each live webinar. So you can check out this channel on YouTube, and the link will be put into the chat function. At the end of this webinar, a survey form will pop up. This is not a scam. We appreciate your comments as it would be used to improve future webinars. Lastly, after today's sharing from all our fantastic panelists, if you find that you do require legal guidance, please write to help@probono.sg for assistance. So we would like to thank James, Weijian, and Victoria once again for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. And with that, on behalf of Pro Bono Singapore, we would like to thank all of you for joining us as well and for all your questions and attention. Have a good week ahead.